not sure if we can stop, but I promised we will be thinking. It's for sure. And to continue the same idea, thank you very much again. To continue the same idea, well, maybe not really the same, but to continue the theme, Lowell Gustafson, «Религия в эпоху гуманной политики». И напомню, что Лоуэлл – доктор философии, секретарь Ассоциации универсальной истории, преподаватель университета Виланова, Соединенные Штаты Америки.
Thank you so much. How is religion evolving in an age of human politics? Perhaps the answer to that question was made yesterday at the end of Ray Kurzweil's movie, which was fascinating. I hope you got to see it, where, remember Ramona, the artificial robot, at the end of the movie is on trial. And the question is she human? And she's trying to defend herself against those who say that she's not. And how does she prove that she's human? She doesn't bring out all of the erudite information that she has at her ability. She doesn't trot out all of those pre-programmed emotions that she might otherwise express. Instead, she puts her hand over her heart. And she speaks out of the depth of her being, and she says, I care so much about the future that I will do anything for it. She is so connected to the future. It matters so much to her, the future of all of humanity, that she wants to protect it, that she wants to make it better. But maybe the wrong person was on trial. Maybe it's not Ramona who should be on trial. Maybe it's we who are on trial. Maybe I am on trial. Am I human? Am I as human as I want to be, as I can be? Or am I a Gustafson? Am I an American? Am I a Westerner? Or am I connected enough to all of humanity in a way that I want to protect it and care for it and give birth to a period that's better? And is that what the evolution of religion is about? What's evolution? It's about the tinkering with abundantly available materials within existing frameworks, or once in a while combining them into new properties, into new combinations. How are we seeing that in religion now, or how might we be seeing that? Are we seeing the connection between different religious traditions? Goodness knows we have an abundant supply of material there. There are billions of people who still express themselves in religious terminology. They express themselves as Christians and as Jews and as Muslims and as Hindus and as Buddhists and any number of other religious traditions. Sometimes some of these people who are expressing stop that and listen. And they ask, how are those other expressions to be incorporated in who I am as a human? Sometimes those people look at another great tradition, the scientific tradition, and they ask, how are those great wisdom traditions of the past, as they've been expressed in our religious literature, to be infused within the results of scientific research? How can we have, in that sense, a religion of science, a science that gives us meaning, that gives us purpose, that gives us an ethic? How can we combine the questions looking into the very small and to the very large? And for those of us who live between the world of the quantum and general relativity, those of us who live between the singularity and infinity, and how can we understand this future? What is religion? It could be almost anything, I suppose, but maybe the etymology, the history of the word tells us something. In Indo-European, the language that's spoken 6,000 years ago on the Russian steppes, the language which gave birth to Latin and Sanskrit, languages of the West and of the East, languages which are spoken between 3 and 4 billion people today. Had a word league or lig. It's the same root word for the English word ligament, that which ties bones together. It's the root word of the Latin word religare, to tie together, to bind fast, to moor. It's the root of the English word religion. Perhaps religion has to do with those connections that we can make between those things which give us a structure. It's also a word religio, respect for what is sacred, for what produces awe. What can produce awe for us in our ironic and cynical age? Isn't the cosmic story that Eric was talking about, that's been outlined by David Christian, by Craig Benjamin, by Fred Spear, by Cynthia Brown, and by so many others, isn't that incredible story of 14 billion years awesome? Isn't it a sacred story, a story which leaves us in awe, a story about the increasing complexity of connections, of the strong force between quarks, creating something that hadn't existed before, protons and neutrons, things which are still with us after 14 billion years ago. The electromagnetic force connecting electrons and protons into atoms, something which hadn't existed before, but now continue for the billions of years. Gravity combining hydrogen and helium into stars and galaxies, giving rise to supernova and the heavier elements that are still with us and out of which I am made and you are made and everything is made. Isn't this more complex connections which have left us with continuity, the universe being incredibly conservative, the universe being incredibly creative, creating that which has not existed before? And we have all of the other stages which Eric went through and which David has gone through in this gradual development towards chemical evolution, the growth of chemical and biochemicals, their combination into life. And over 4 billion years ago, with descent with modification and DNA producing, after some 3.6 billion years ago, us 200,000 years ago, to where we have cultural evolution, which is different from cosmic and biological evolution, where we become the nature that can select what is necessary for us to survive and to thrive, so that we have consciousness, so that we can collectively learn, so that we can become more sophisticated in our connections and our relationships as we move from clan to city to nation to empire and perhaps to humanity. So we have, in the religious expressions that we've had over the many years, attempts to combine the cosmic story, the stories of the origin of life, the stories of the origin of the universe, how our human nature is connected to that cosmic nature in ways that provides an ethical connection, a sense of meaning, a sense of living what is beyond what is seemingly real now. How do we make these combinations? We can do that by being people of the book, people who read the ancient expressions, whether it's the Vedic stories, the Bible, or the Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. You read the texts and you understand the expressions of people who have tried to articulate the sense of meaning and of ethics. But we need to combine that with being people of rocks, because it's in the rocks. Remember, Ray Kurzweil held a rock in his hand and he marveled at the information in that rock. At Col di Gioco, there's an observatory which studies the rocks and which tells us the history of our Earth. We need to be people of light because it's in the light that tells us where the universe comes from and where you and I come from. We need to be people of the genes and study the story of the genes to tell us where life has developed and how it has reached to where we are now. If we can combine those wisdom traditions, then perhaps we can answer the question of how to be human in a new religious age. How has religion been part of this great process of increasingly sophisticated relationships and connections over time? We start with the era, perhaps, in human history of clan politics, of kinship, of family, of holding rocks which may be hundreds of thousands of years old, at least are tens of thousands of years old. And like Ray Kurzweil, what information did they draw from holding these rocks? These are small. These are hand-sized rocks. They fit in the palm of your hand. What did the people who held these draw from them? Perhaps these are how pregnant women look to themselves, these small rocks that they could hold. You know, we do have a fairly unintelligent design of our bodies, don't we? Our skeletons are not well designed to give birth to our big brains. And so as a result, and it's worth it to have these big information processors because they permit us not just to process information, but what's the information we process? It's the social connections that we have between us. So we want to know through speech, through gesture, through expression, through written words, through pixels dancing across the screen, how we think, how we feel, and I can have an understanding of what you're trying to tell me, and I can connect with you and relate with you, and together we can imagine and conceive of a new future. Why did they hold these things? Because they're afraid of the future. The future of giving birth can be painful. It can be fatal. You want to hold on and gain information from that rock, from the earth, from that source of wisdom, which perhaps will get you through this and get you through a profound commitment to the future. Every mother who's given birth is committed to the future, and in spite of all evidence to the contrary of this misbehaving child, believes in that child, has faith in that child, because it will become a person who can contribute to a future. Every mother believes in the future and has faith in her child. Here's from this Blombos cave from about 90,000 years ago. Someone in that cave, inside a rock, inside the earth, etched a little stone, found a pattern, a crisscrossing pattern with lines connecting with each other. This stone found in a cave where the clan lived, where the family lived, where the clan lived. This was a person fascinated by connection, by relationship, by patterned relationships. These shells with little holes drilled in them, probably a necklace, a sense of connection to that life in the seashore, which we ingested. It became part of us. It sustains our life. And we see the beauty of nature from which that sustenance of life comes from, which I will wear on myself to beautify myself and connect myself with the nature which is around me and from which I draw my life. The fantastic caves at Lascaux and Chauvet and elsewhere, where people go down into the earth, into the rock, where they draw their connections to the animals, to the natural world, where they put their hands on the wall and touch it, because that's somehow where these magnificent creatures now symbolically live. These caves, which are often compared to the Sistine Chapel of tens of thousands of years ago, a profound sense of connection within the hunter-gatherer, scavenging societies, the clan societies, of what connects us to each other and to nature. We have, within the progression of human development, this profound creative moment, moving from hunter-gatherers to the village, to the agricultural societies, where somehow different clans, different ethnic groups, different families needed to live together, and we needed shamans. We needed great religious leaders to imagine the symbols that could explain to us why different biological groups should live together, why we could have a multi-clan village. They left the cave and they looked up to the sky, to the endless possibilities that they found there. And they started building up, and they started looking up, and they started providing a way to combine things which didn't belong together. Different clans didn't belong together. Only biological clans belonged together, but the shamans imagined how to put together what didn't belong together. We have in the States those full-time political professionals who start to imagine, how can we put together, how can we connect, can we get villages and cities to relate to each other within nations in more sophisticated, more developed political unities. And they're expressed in great pyramids that reach to the sky, that reach to our imaginations, asking us to think about something which hasn't existed before, but which we can conceive and which we can make real. The wonderful goddess Nut in Egyptian mythology becomes the protector, protecting us from those forces beyond which might otherwise threaten us, incorporating within her the sky and the stars, and protecting all of those people, not all of those who are related to each other, but people from all kinds of specialized functions. And she's able to give protection to them. She's able to create a new unity in a new combined empire of the south and the north of Egypt. The Maya, who are building the caves at the top of their pyramids, combining the earth and the sky. The silly people who worry about the destruction of 2012 apparently haven't read the Popol Vuh, the great creation story of the Maya, because if they had, they would be able to understand why the Maya saw the snake as a holy creature. Why is it holy? Because it can crawl down into the caves of the earth. It can slither along our world. It can climb up into the trees. The snake can connect, can combine, can unify Xibalba, the lower world, our world, and the upper world. That's what the king can do in crawling up the pyramid and into the cave at the top of the pyramid, can go inside of the cave, inside of the rock, inside of the earth, and by carrying out the right rituals, by carrying out the right activities, can stave off the end of the world and can come out and in front of all of the people can give birth to a new period of time. That's what gives legitimacy to the Maya king, not the prediction of the end of the world, but the creation of a new period of time by attentiveness and by the proper actions which are necessary. We have the great Vedic traditions. Yesterday in David's presentation, he drew on the great stories of Kali, the god of destruction. We also have the god, the sustainer god, the creator god in the great Hindu traditions. And from that, the relationship between the cosmos and ourselves and the profound development of ethics. David also talked about the Buddha. And we need to read the Buddhist tradition and to think ourselves about what do we need to renounce in order to achieve an enlightened state. We have the great Jewish tradition with its fabulous book of Genesis, which imagines a single source for all that exists, which talks about the stages of development over time, and which links us to each one of those stages to understand the great ethical purposes of relationship and of walking with each other in the garden. We have in the great Christian traditions with the cathedrals the use of space and sense of drawing us up, of looking up like in the pyramids towards the skies, and of imagining that out of death, we get out of the death, perhaps, of beings, of the death of supernova, a creation of new life. We have in the great Islamic traditions a fascination, not only a history of science, but a continued fascination with structure, with design, the types of increasingly sophisticated structures and relationships that we saw perhaps on that rock at Blombos. But we have in the Russian Orthodox tradition this great combination within this enormous nation. A connection perhaps between church and state. Is it everything that all of us wish it had been? Well, probably not. But it's this great connection in this great national tradition, which imagines and, like in the cathedrals, asks us to gaze upwards and to imagine a space where there are limitless possibilities. We have other great national religious traditions that have been institutionalized. The Church of England, my background comes from the Church of Sweden. We have all kinds of civic religions in my country, which makes me proud to be an American. We have many, many national traditions. The question is now, can we be shamans? Who are the shamans among us who can integrate these different expressions of our religious past, who can integrate them with the great advances and insights that have been offered to us by those who have done scientific research? Who among us can attract all of us to this type of a Congress? Those of us who come from traditions that don't belong together, from nations that don't belong together. Who's the shaman who's going to provide the symbols and the meaning that will connect us so that we can exchange information and ideas, so that we can understand each other and understand each other's deepest emotions, so that we can create a new level of religious expression, which will be the human religion? At the end of the day, can we give birth to a new period of time, to a new religious expression, so at the end of the day, we can say, it's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lowell.